adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Long before Glacier National Park or Kalispell, Montana even existed, there was a man with a dream who turned this entire place upside down. His name was Charles Conrad, and he moved his family here and started what we now know to be the gateway to Glacier or Kalispell, Montana. But there's a lot of stories that we're going to go through, including a president who once stepped foot in this home, and we're going to see all of the beauty that exists in this historic mansion. So come along with me and get your walking shoes ready. We're going up some stairs. This is going to be fun. Okay, as we move throughout the house, there's going to be a series of different rooms, all of which have pretty much the same possessions that were here whenever the original family lived here. And in the 70s, when this became a place that people in Kalispell could come because it was donated to the city of Kalispell, they came in and they said that the daughter who still had possession was a bit of a hoarder. So all of the items that we see were actually from the original home, which is interesting. I am doing a self-guided tour while here. It's $15 to do this. This is one of the most incredible historic structures, just walking into the front room. It is beautiful. Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about the family as we go, but oh my goodness. Currently we're in the library, and in the library you can find the original desk, a typewriter, some facts from 1879, some of the photos of Charles Edward Conrad and Charles Edward Conrad Jr. The elaborate nature of the glass is amazing in here, and all of this is original, as is the woodwork in the home. Now, supposedly, when they took possession of the home, most everything was still intact. It just needed some minor repairs. They did redo the floors. They also had to do some painting, but structurally, everything was very well built, and even from the 1800s, where it took them 3 years to construct this home, everything was just in such great condition. The architecture is astounding. There's over 20 rooms in this property. And as we kind of move throughout, I'm going to show you what each of the rooms look like. But I can honestly say that this was the epitome of society. Now, this particular home was built by the founder of Kalispell. He had made it big with the gold rush, and in doing so, he relocated to this valley and created the community of Kalispell. And his community built around him, and for years and years and years, people just knew this to be the Conrad home. Even to this day, the Conrad Mansion is one of the most visited places in Kalispell, just because it shows you a piece of the past, but also the opulence of the times. Oh my goodness. At the home, there are so many historic photos, and then there are these little tags that tell you a bit more about the items that are in here. For example, this one was purchased by Letty and Alicia on a trip to Japan in 1910. It is the Chinese serving dishes. They also have a warming oven below that is directly from the Conrad family collection. And this was built into a radiator, and it was used to keep food warm between servings. And this is something you don't see everywhere. This is a quick break push button light switch that dates all the way back to the original construction in 1895. Oh, this is beautiful. Like a little solarium. All of these plants. Everything in this room is just amazing. The attention to detail of stocking these, making it look as though it would have whenever they lived here, is incredible. Which is why we come to places like this. And the collection of items that they had is just something of wonder. Now, you can only assume that the family, because they were very well-to-do, probably had an entire staff of people who would take care of them, because they have various rooms, including the little butler's pantry area. They also have a kitchen porch. I am in the kitchen currently, and it is very big. and expansive, big enough for more than one person to be working at any given time. And with the elaborate parties that they would have and the gatherings, I can only assume they had some kind of maid service here. But we're gonna take a look around and just kind of soak in some of these rooms, and then I'll catch back up with you. We'll talk about this a little bit more. On this wall, we have Alicia Timmy Vick, born in 1921, passed away in 2010. She was the daughter of Alicia Conrad and Willie McCutcheon. And this was approximately from 1924. This photo was actually taken in this very room in front of the cook stove. So like right over here in this area. And stories throughout the entirety of the property will tell you more about the people, including these over here, which answer our question, did they have some form of wait staff? They did. They had an entire maid staff. Often these were young, married women from Norway or Sweden, and they lived off-site at a different place with their families. But they also have the mansion butler, and it says here that male servants were usually Japanese men that were recruited, and they lived off-site in a dormitory. Now, as you walk through, the floors creak and you can get some of the original smells of the home, and it's absolutely wonderful. But facts like that tell us just kind of about life here. Now, it also mentions that a lot of the male staff would start out here, then they might go to work for like the railroad or something. And so I can only imagine that this was a very interesting job. You probably saw a lot of very behind the scenes stuff. But this is one of the major rooms that the wait staff and the servants would have been in. But there's a lot more to this, so we're just gonna keep on going. Look at this, guys. Even way back, there were elevators, and this was a freight elevator that operated off of a balance and pulley system. Wasn't expecting that here. While visiting, there are some stairs here, so I'm gonna go ahead and take those up. But along the way, I noticed this beautiful glass. Once again, they spared no expense on any of the items that were placed in this home. And you can see that through all of the different fixtures and all of the beautiful different kinds of bevels that are reflected throughout. One of the things I've learned as I go to a lot of historic spaces is that as you visit, you can definitely tell what kind of person a person was based on their home and which furnishings that they chose. There were a lot of people who had a lot of disposable income, and they wanted to show that to others. In other places you go to, people didn't have as much, and so they had very primitive home finishings. This was definitely not the case here. This is gorgeous. Every little attention to detail is immaculate. In this room, we see how the children's rooms would have looked. There are 3 dresses here, and each of those dresses are from different times. There is an infant's gown that has an eyelet and tuck, as well as it is from about the 1890s. There's one that ranges between the 1890s and the 1910s, and it uses embroidery and lace. And then there's a toddler's dress that has white cotton that was woven in and also has white cotton floss embroidery and buttonholes. And that one's from about the 1920s. Now, while we're in this room, I thought this was a great time for us to discuss the self-guided tour and all that we will see here. This was a wonderful way to kind of see what's going on. These you just take around with you. You can read at your own pace, and it allows you an insight into the property as you're looking at the rooms, like this one. For example, here we learn that the construction was completed in 1895, and it was designed by the renowned architect Kurtling Cutter. I also learned that this is built in a style called the Norman shingle style, and it was a very distinct style that was popular around the early 1900s and late 1800s. And with that, they were allowed to build some pretty impressive things, might I say. But as we keep going, I'm going to tell you a few more of these fun facts as we make it to the next room. Came from those stairs, and we're going to go along this hall where there's an open facing in this room and down this area. Looks like some baggage in there, so I can't wait to get to the other side and find out more about what this room was. Before we do, 26 rooms. That's how many rooms are in this entire building. This is one home, 26 rooms. But not only that, they had 8 fireplaces, and then they also had 3 floors and about 13,000 square feet in a single home, which is clearly why this is called a mansion. As we look around, you can see that this is one of the bedrooms. And this particular bedroom shows off a full closet of beautiful gowns and clothing. You can see some hairpins over here, and they have some other really unique things that they highlight within this room, including this beautiful embroidered blanket quilt. It's a yo-yo quilt built. This one is a yo-yo quilt from the 1920s. And you can see this is a Greek cross, which is a pieced quilt from 1919 to 1920. It has the red and the white graphic on it. This particular room was considered the gray bedroom, which is the guest bedroom. As you can see here on the self-guided tour, it is one of many rooms. Each one seems to be earmarked by an interesting name. The gray, the antique, the violet, the blue, the master, the rose, and then they have a bathroom, a billiard room, and of course that nursery that we just looked at. So as you move throughout, each one of these is labeled so you can better understand the layout of the home, but also as you see the furnishings, you can kind of understand why they would pick certain furnishings for certain kinds of rooms. Obviously, the nursery is going to have all the kids' stuff. It's also going to have the things that are the most relatable to children. The gray room here is going to be a guest room, so they're going to have nice things, but they're not going to have as nice as they're going to have in the master bedroom, and so on and so forth. You can also tell a lot about a home by how they place the rooms and who was in those rooms. And so I'm very interested to see where the master is in comparison to the guest rooms. But we're going to keep on going, and I'm going to show you more views from the next couple of rooms, and then we'll catch up and talk about this side, which is the history in general of the family. As I came into the antique room, I just learned that there was a very famous artist who's one of the most famous in Montana, still regarded today. He used to come here and he used to enjoy staying in this room. And I think that I can see why this room would be selected for him. It's a little bit bigger, has more room to kind of spread out. There's a little office behind me. This is a beautiful room. The woodwork in here is fabulous, as it is throughout the rest of the house. But each of these rooms tells the story of the room, but also of the people who might have stayed here. And he was considered to be a dignified guest who was always welcome. And the art that he created reflects most of Montana's early history, even to this day. So that's pretty spectacular. This right here, Theodore Roosevelt, and he has a iconic teddy bear beside him, of course. The 26th president of the United States, guess what? He's been here too. He was a huge advocate of conservation of lands, and right in our backyard, right here in Kalispell, you have Glacier National Park, which they were actively pursuing making into something that could be protected and preserved. And in doing so, he would come here and he would stay at this home because this was like their big guy. And so he would stay here and visit the Conrad family while he was going out to Glacier to check out all the beauty and all of the progress and all the things they wanted to do. Can you imagine? I mean, this suite right here, a former president slept in. Like, not just a former president, a president who is involved with everything that is natural in this country that we protect and preserve today. All the places that I've been to, all the national parks, they all developed as a result of his effort to try to create conservation and realize these places should be protected. Nobody should be building up cities in the middle of them, and that they had something awesome. And he stayed right in this room. But like in the other rooms, there are little signs like this that let you see a closer look at different pieces that are in the room, including some of the dresses. There are 3 dresses in this room as well. These are all from varying times, and it talks about all the different little details that would have been from the times that they were developed. And I think that is just really neat. See, you and I come into a room like this and we think, ooh, this is really nice, this is beautiful. But it's not just about the beauty or the feathers or the pieces that are on the top. This is about the stories of all the life that was lived inside these rooms. And throughout the museum here, the entirety of the self-guided tour, we are allowed to get a glimpse into those people that were here in the rooms and how they might have served. But we're also told a little bit more about the times. Through each one of these items, many of which, again, were from the original home, we're able to see what selections people made, what kind of materials were used at the time. And through the fashion, we're able to see how times have changed and what was periodically in fashion and what was considered to be the upper echelon of that time frame. Because like most everything else, when we see something come down a catwalk in Milan, it's going to make its way to the United States a couple of years later through fast fashion and other things that we can afford. But when it's walking that runway, only the best of the best can actually have those things because it's really expensive. And so these people were those people. And that could put some things in context as to why, this is still here today. There's a lot of old money that's out there, and a lot of times they want to preserve those legacies, and they've done such an immaculate job here. I was walking around outside whenever I first got here and realized that the landscaping here is amazing, to say the least. It's beautiful, but it paints a picture of a time of relaxing in the garden and taking a stroll, and a simpler time. And I think that that is a true reflection of the real story behind this place, even today. So as I keep walking, I'm interested in seeing who else's face that we're going to find here, what else we're going to learn from this card, and what other items we're going to see around, because there are so many. We even had buttons to activate the call box that was located in the kitchen to get service. Yeah, this wasn't your run-of-the-mill 1800s, 1900s home. You know how whenever Ring cameras started coming out and you started seeing all the really nice homes that were like the new builds getting Ring, and it wasn't something that just like everybody could get because like it was brand new and it was really just not normal. This was like that. They had buzzers. I guess that's better than a bell. We have made it to the room we could see from the stairs. This is the trunk room. And it looks like all of the luggage is in here, and they could go through and pack things or unpack things. And they have plenty of places for storage. Okay. Just across from that, we have another bedroom. And this one is the violet bedroom. This was another guest bedroom. I can understand the violet. Look at this crushed velvet on that chair. That's something I would want in my house. But on top of that is a crazy quilt. So we're getting to see all of the different quilting types within the home. According to this was also Charles Davenport's bedroom, and he had matching bird's eye maple bed set that included the vanity, the bed frame, 2 bedside tables, and also a dresser. And there is a picture also that we can look at. There are a couple of them over here. There's these 2. Then there is a slightly different picture of Alicia from 1934. So the first one we saw was in the kitchen, and now we see this one. Along with all of the beautiful fixings in this room, we also learned that Charlie Davenport, was the oldest child of Charles and Letty, and he attended St. John's Military Academy in New York. He went to Exeter. Yeah, this family was well connected, they were well educated, and they had all the possibilities in the world to do all sorts of amazing things. And learning about each one of them and seeing these photos is just absolutely incredible. But there's a little bit more information in here about him, so let's learn. It looks like he became the vice president of the Conrad National Bank in Kalispell, and he assumed the role of president in 1914, but he was quite the little playboy even though he was married, and he ended up getting divorced. He ended up staying in the Kalispell area until his passing in 1941. So that's the story of Charlie. You know, this family is definitely going to have some twists and turns along the way, but there's also some information in here about his little wife, and we can find out a little bit more about her. Here we learn that she was actually his first wife, and she married him in 1907, and they had 2 children, which were Catherine and Billy, and then she got a divorce in 1915 and moved to Hollywood. What? And she was an actress and stunt woman. The plot thickens. I always enjoy putting together the pieces of the stories like these because people are fascinating, and just to kind of see where they came from, what they're doing, what brought them to this particular point that we are now touring their mansion is just awesome. But I think that's a good time to go back to this and learn a little bit more about the overall family history. Here we have a family tree, including Charles Conrad and also Letty, and they produced the 3 children, Charlie, Kate, and Alicia. But there was also Charles Edward Conrad Jr., which was produced from Sings in the Middle Woman, Unknown, from 1881. Here we learn that Charles, which was the dad, was actually born in 1850 in Virginia. In 1868, he traveled to Fort Benton, Montana, and he worked for the I.G. Baker Mercantile Company and was offered a business partnership there for 4 years. He ended up marrying a Blackfoot woman, Sings in the Middle Woman, and they had their 1 son. And after she returned to Canada with her tribe, he met Alicia, which also was known as Letty, and she had been born in 1860 in Nova Scotia as well. She was educated, she loved music, and she was a philanthropist, and they were married in 1881. Were married, he started traveling to the Flathead Valley, which is what brought them ultimately to here, to founding Kalispell, and also to being extremely involved in the community in so many different ways. Ended up raising their 3 children here at the mansion, Charlie, Kate, and Alicia, and Charles only lived at the mansion for approximately 7 years, and then he passed away in 1902 from diabetes complications, and Letty went on to live more than 20 more years as a widow here. Brings us to the conclusion of the story. Well, kind of. We still have a lot of exploring to do, but downstairs, the first room that I went into was the music room. The music room was beautiful. It had elaborate wallpaper. It was adorned with a tea set where she would often host tea parties and bring people in. And because of her love for music, she would play various instruments there. And I think that it was just beautiful in that room. A great introduction for sure. But I'm off to see some more, and I'm going to start off with this room right here. This is the little bathroom that's attached. This wasn't super common either. They have a little toilet, which looks like a little composting toilet over here, and then some drawers, and they had running water in here again. Come into the second floor, you can see the landing into the first floor, and all of these rooms are available to us. I think we will start here in the blue bedroom, which was Alicia Conrad Campbell's room. This room is huge. It is super, super huge. So whenever you come into this room, this is one that has a fireplace. They have a dressing table and also a little sink in there. Believe it or not, that is a curling iron from way back. We have 2 dresses in this room, one from 1900 to 1910 and one from the 30s. Tons of hat pins in this room, and they were used as they would stick a pin through the hat and the hair to hold the hat on. This has got to be one of my favorite parts of this room. This is a stained glass pass-through to the other side, which is where you look down into the lower level. So the light would come in naturally and light up this wall during various points of the day. This is gorgeous glass. Again, continuing with the different quilts. On this one, we have a double Irish chain quilt from 1890 to 1910. And in this case on the bed, these are all folding fans, and they had these at the peak of usage during the 18th century. They were used in part for cooling, but also they were used as decoration and the ability to show an accessory that matched. These are pictures of George Campbell here on the right, and that was the second husband of Alicia Conrad. Our left is a closet that is not available to us, but as we proceed, this room turns into this room, which, wow, this is incredible. There are all sorts of pieces in here that are just very personal, including this from the Red Cross to Mrs. Conrad. And it's just an original letter from way back in 1919. These 2 bodices are both from approximately 1910, and one has lace embroidered and then ribbon and flowers, and the other is a bead embroidered net that has silk and satin ribbon. As we continued from one room into the next, this room also has some elaborate stained glass, and it is to the side of the bed going into the hall area out here. You can see the light that it lets in is just beautiful and casts these brilliant colors into the room. Now, a lot of the clothing that we're finding, of course, are focused more on the women's fashions of that time. But in learning about these fashions, we get to see the changing of the times throughout colors and styles and embroidery techniques. And so each room has at least a couple of these. These larger rooms, though, have like 3 or 4 different sets of these so that we can see all of the different designs. Despite being vintage pieces, some of these pieces are just so well worked into the room that they just look like they're organically a part of how they might have had them. There are these large benches that open up to a window with a landing that they would have been able to go outside and sit on this patio space. Step down into a walk-in closet and dressing area. This is beautiful. The phrasing on here, the name of the large upper chamber facing the east was Peace. Now, Charles Edward Conrad Sr. is seen here, and there are a few quotes about him, but also some brief information, including his story that we previously spoke about, but he actually passed away at the age of 52, and in doing so, he died of those complications of diabetes, but also had tuberculosis. On the opposite side of the mantle, we learn more about Alicia, or Letty Stanford Conrad, and it says here that she continued to manage the finances of the estate until her passing June 24th, 1923, at the age of 63. It might seem kind of strange, but there is a sink inside of this bedroom only a few feet away from the bed. But in doing this, they were able to have access to things that they might need and not have to go down to a separate room or bathroom, and this was very convenient. These places also had water closets or chamber pots or things like that that people could use, and so some of these closets might contain those things. I do not know, but we are now into a different room, and this room is vibrant and rosy colored and has lots of like rich reds in it, and I think you can see even in the reflection on my face, this is a very red room. It's in fact called the Rose Bedroom, which was Catherine's room. And with the crushed velvet, the opulence of the feeling of the textures were something that not everyone could afford. And as you go into this room, you notice each one has a fireplace for a heat source. This one has a beautiful stained glass screen that when the fire behind it would show through, would echo all of the beauty of the colors that would then filter into the room. Of course, we get to know a little bit more about Catherine, or Kate Conrad Van Duzer here. She was born in 1885, passed away in 1835, and she passed away from an appendectomy. It wasn't your average woman though. She was actually a wonderful singer, and she was offered the opportunity to sing in the opera in Italy. That is crazy. Much like the other room, there is a nice walk-in dressing area in this one, all of which have skylights to help because lights were not needing to be used all of the time this way. There are a few modern touches like this window unit that's been placed here to keep us cool as we visit. However, these windows would initially have been opened to allow circulation and flow. A lot of homes of this time didn't have the ability to have any kind of fans or anything, so that's how they would cool the home. Inside here, they have several different items, and one of the things I think is really neat is they have painted the radiators in the various rooms to reflect the color pattern that they used in the rooms themselves. Not sure if that was done as a result of them repainting the rooms or if that was already kind of how it was. I do not know, but it is really neat. In the nursery, all of the patterns were painted and it was ornate and beautiful. But there's a few other interesting things in here too that I just want to kind of point out to you all. Inside this case, there are a series of purses, many of which are very intricate. Some of them have beadwork, others have a really cool like texture or pattern that they used. And you can see they even have some little tiny ones in there. Out, you'll find these beautiful curtains where they could just like close off entire sections, and this is no exception here. So above, you'll notice that there's a curtain section that closes off the bathrooms, the full bathrooms. So you have a toilet room or a water closet in here where they had a flushing toilet. On the other side, where you could separate it, you have a bathroom with a very large tub, and this actually comes in from the Rose room. So the Rose room had access to this bathroom directly. I am assuming that the master also has a similar setup within that closet that we couldn't get into maybe a while ago. This is my favorite part though. So this is again the downstairs area that we came in through, and this is the bedroom that we were looking at a while ago, which is the master bedroom. You can see it has its own little landing right there. Not only does it have a landing, it has a separate entry right here where again you could close it off with the curtains to have a little bit of privacy. And there is an area right here where they could have a service table that would be brought into them if they wanted something. I'm sure there's another one of those little buzzers around here somewhere where they could call someone up to help them. But they could leave through the bedroom and go into the other bedroom. They could go into the Rose room through another exit. They could come out through this door, or they could go out to the landing and overlook everything below. Again, going to the layout, the Rose room is right in front of us. The master is here, the bathroom is here. And then if we turn, the billiard area is right here. It's a very large, expansive space where they could have a pool table and other games. But then you could go over in this direction And whenever we go in that direction, that's where we came from earlier with the first initial bedrooms. And then downstairs, there's the big open space. This entertainment space, they could have done business here. They could have smoked cigars here. They could have done a lot of things. They could have used this as the family grew up as like a play space. But it is awesome to see. Also, I think that it's very interesting the colors that they've selected that complement the wood that we're seeing around, because even though when you look into the room it kind of can get a little bit dark, I'm sure that's also by design. So it's pretty neat to take like a meandering look, but also to look at all of the furnishings as you're going. There's some elaborate pieces here, some hand-carved pieces, and then also again, as you really look inside, you can see some of the older games that were played in this very room. And there's this, which is Alicia's bracelet. It was constructed in the late 1890s, and it was given to little Alicia by her parents, and it's made of 14-karat yellow gold, mine-cut diamonds, and diamond clusters. This is also a part of the Conrad family collection. Brings us to our next set of steps. Can you imagine having a dollhouse of your own house when your own house is absolutely this incredible? In addition, however, we learn about the Kalispell Town Site Company here and how Charles Conrad said, if you'll bring the railroad, I'll bring the town. When I visited the museum here in town, there's a very specific room that talks about a town that used to exist that simply was kind of done away with as a result of the railroad. Well, Kalispell itself was the town that made that other town just kind of go away because the railroad came here. It made goods and services easier to move. It made doing things way, way easier. And that was all by design of Charles Conrad. So he took a piece of land that didn't really have that much, and he turned it into what Kalispell is today, which is one of the largest cities in the gateway to Glacier National Park. But not only did he do that, he also set up the infrastructure for all of the other things to come, including the airport that's here now, the businesses. And he did that by having a goal and a dream and a design to bring in the railroad. Now, did he handcraft everybody's future? No, he did not. But did he make it possible for that future to exist here in this area? Yeah, he did. Now, along the way, there's some other rooms up here, including the sewing room. And in the sewing room, you can find some antique sewing machines, some patterns, some different fabric. And as we've been going around and learning about all of the different items, this room gives a little insight as to how those things would have been designed. As you look around, you can find thread and pins and different kinds of little antique pieces. Again, most of this having had been in the original home. Next to that, the children's playrooms, which were in the attic apparently. So we go through here, and this is a more narrow room. Tons of original toys, antique items. You can see so many little tea sets over there. This is incredible. But like, the room goes on and on. There's so many interesting things up here. So we're gonna go to that side in just a moment. But first, I found all of these old skis. Did you know that you can ski in the Whitefish area? So typically that was thought to be more of a luxury sport that wasn't accessible to everyone. So naturally, the Conrads enjoyed it. This room is filled with all sorts of the activities that they enjoyed, from little tricycles to ping pong, tennis rackets, sleds, croquet. They were a family who enjoyed life, and it is reflected through their home and all that is inside. Again, more photos. This was from 1899. This was Charles Conrad and his horse Champ, and it's sitting on the desk of Mrs. Conrad. This is an incredible chest. Again, all of these items were accumulated over time in various places, so they all have stories. Mrs. Conrad's desk was sitting outside of Mr. Conrad's sky office. And behind this glass wall, you can see all kinds of interesting things, including a pretty impressive rifle collection. In fact, toward the end of his life, it says the sky office was his third floor retreat. And he would come here as though it was the equivalent of what most people call a man cave today. I don't personally love that word. I just don't. It's just not my thing. But at the same time, if I had to pick a thing that epitomized man cave, I would say it's this, because there's a literal bear on the floor and a massive bison on the wall. And there's like so many interesting things in here. The closer that you look, the more that you notice that this truly was probably that. They have horns that are hanging up the guns. The guns are a vast collection, and from what I've been told, this isn't all of them. But let me just show you around. Each wall, you see these guns. The collection is held up by these special horns that are also reflected in the chair that you see. The wallpapers are pretty loud and busy wallpaper. Here is your bear. Not any bear, this guy right here. You can also see other pieces of taxidermy on that wall. Outside of the room, you can see all of the different things that you need to know about the various items that are featured on the wall itself. And it definitely looks pretty interesting in here, to say the least. But yeah, this is where he would retreat. I mean, it does have a pretty good view out that window, it looks like, as well. So we could probably see a vast majority of the yard. But then it was probably a little bit quieter up here than it was in the rest of the house with everybody in there, so. Now, in addition, there's lots of other ways that they could sit and relax. They could store things up here that they weren't using in the main yard throughout the year, basically. So they could put extra stuff up here to just like keep it good. And as you walk around, there are now some shelves here for some more of the firearms, but you get a good idea of the collection of items that they had in this space. Again, whenever I was first introduced to the museum downstairs, the first thing I was told was that the person who was still in possession of the home, the last person in the family who basically donated this, was a bit of a hoarder. She didn't get rid of anything. And so when they came in, they had to literally go through the rooms and clear them out just to figure out what was even there. And I'm sure that the attic was probably packed full of really cool things, some of which probably have gone on to other places and other museums, some of which probably had to just kind of go away because they weren't in good shape anymore. But to see this and how they've kind of laid it out in different sections so you can have this experience, it's absolutely incredible. Highly recommend. Great use of $15 for my day, and just to be able to come here and see into this life that I will never experience and the most of us will never experience is incredible. The fact of the matter is, this was a very different time in Montana history, but also in just history in general. And so these people were the upper echelon. They were like the Rothschilds of this area. It's hard to believe, right? But when you see the space and all of the rooms, it starts to come together really quickly. On this floor, the laundry room. Everybody has to have clean clothes, and it was done up here in the good old laundry. The longest time, laundry was not done in the more traditional way that we do it now with machines. They would have wash tub basins, they would hand wash everything. However, as times changed, laundry became more accessible and easier, and they created machines like these. And so then they could actually wash the clothes a bit less in a tedious way. However, this room is interesting because they also have these pullouts where then they can hang dry inside the space, and it is a heated hang dry area. So it would push heat into this region so it could dry clothes, because many of the months here in Montana are not great for having to have a line outside. Putting context to history is always interesting. And normally whenever I go to like a ghost town or something, you see a bunch of people hanging stuff out on a line because it's not where they have a lot of money. But people who had money, they had status. People who had money had things like this, and it made their lives super convenient, as a person would come up here and do it for them, and then they would just have to simply reap the benefits of opening a closet, and there it is. But that was a tedious task for the people who were doing those jobs. So things like this made that a lot easier. There's one more room right across this way, and we're gonna go check it out. But first, a taxidermy display room. And there are a few items in here that are taxidermy that were originally in the home. They may have been in this area, they may have been in other areas, but you can see all of this is just regular old taxidermy. But here also we learn about Harry Penn Stanford, and Harry was the youngest brother of Letty. And after the passing of the father in 1879, they traveled together along with the mother from Nova Scotia to Fort Benton, Montana. And they were going to live with their older brother, James. And he continued to live in Fort Benton until 1891, when he actually moved to the Kalispell area. Why is he next to the taxidermy? Well, because when he moved to the Kalispell area, he was the first sheriff, and then he opened his own place to do taxidermy, and so it was something that was close to the family, and so they have a room for it here. But he also was a writer and a naturalist, and he was a major part of many of the things that happened here in the Kalispell area and also within Glacier. Again, this family was very well connected in all aspects of development of this region. And it's just pretty cool to see. The little room that was across the way was actually a bathroom. They have a toilet, a tub, a sink. Everything is very blue in here. They also have some different sachets and things that you would use in the bath. And this was the main bathroom on this floor, and it's right next to the office. Of course, the Conrads had the Conrad Bank, and it started out very small. It evolved into something much, much bigger. And in this upper floor, you can find out a little bit more about the first bank in Kalispell that started in 1891 by the Conrad brothers. And it was the state chartered bank. Entrepreneurs, they had so many irons in the fire when it came to things that they were doing in this town. So many. And you can see that still reflected by many of the downtown historic area. Today, it was all began because of a family with a goal. And there's a lot of crazy stories that go along with that maybe we'll get into on another video whenever I come back to this region, but wow. It's time to go downstairs. On the right there, that's where the music room is, so let's take a step. Wow, this is awesome. Immediately we have like a serving fountain here right off of the main room. I just finished up on the inside. There's a few more things that I want to check out on the outside before we head out today. I have had so much fun here. This is just so neat. I love to come and get brain wrinkles from new places, but also to learn from the past, because I think that, like I've always said here on the channel, we learn from the past to make a better tomorrow, but even sometimes just glimpsing into a world that's unfamiliar to us can really make a huge difference. And so today, that is exactly what I've been doing here at the Conrad Mansion. But there is an original Conrad carriage, one of their carriages that they actually drove around, well, or pulled around with horses. I don't know, we're about to go see what version of carriage that we're talking about, because with history, it could go either way. You don't have to look very far. It is inside this A-frame structure right here. Wow. Before we look though, we'll get a couple more glances. I just went through the gift shop, which is in the back section, and this is in the grandmother's section of the property. So both of the grandmothers lived in the lower level, and they were very close to both sides of being able to interact with all things. It was explained to me that the grandmothers were very different. One was very outgoing, one was more reserved. They got along super well, and they had these little hidden cubbies where they could interact with the grandkids and leave them messages, and the grandkids could leave them things. And inside they have one of the first letters that they were able to discover from that, and they were able to share that with me too. And oh, that is so amazing. Little hidden cubbies. I wonder how many there are throughout the house. I also had the answer of what I was wanting to know from upstairs. There are tiny little windows throughout the entirety of the upstairs and little doors and latches, and it was so the kids could play throughout the entirety of the attic and have like their own little world up there, which is so neat. But now it's time to look at this carriage. Oh wow, this is so well preserved. It has the lanterns on it. It's a little harder to see with the glass, but this is so nice. You can even get a look inside and see the cloth interior, all of the different stitching. This is so neat. Get in by stepping up, and then they would be inside, and that's where they would ride, right there. History is one of the neatest things that we can explore. From the rock wall, which stretches around the entire property, to kind of like isolate it from the other homes and set it apart, to the elaborate gardens, the gorgeous views. This place is a place that you will not want to miss if you come to Kalispell, because it just sets so much context for why Kalispell is what it is today. You know, I came to Kalispell thinking, oh, I'm going to go to Glacier. I'm going to go see my friends. And I'm leaving here with so many great little pieces, nuggets of information, brain wrinkles. And all of it has been just one big story that is a continuation of the never-ending stories that are abundant around us. Similar faces, different places, cool facts, unique things, all of which who have brought us to the place that we are today, as we have ended up here at the Conrad Mansion. So remember guys, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. Take the time, take a walk, enjoy yourself, stretch your legs, grow some brain wrinkles, and have a glorious time. If you visit the Kalispell area, check out the Conrad Mansion, and I'll see you next time. Bye! This place was epic.